Well, good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started so we can try to get finished on time. So we want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us this afternoon. This is Jason Warner. I'm the Director of Strategic Engagement at Greater Ohio Policy Center. I'm joined this afternoon by my colleague, no stranger, I'm sure, to all of you, Aaron Clapper. And we're going to provide you with an update about where things stand right now with the Brownfield remediation program. There have been a couple of updates even today for the existing program, and there have been some developments in the last 24 hours that we wanted to update you about as well as we are looking at the future of this program over the next 2 years or so. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. And the first thing that I wanted to provide everyone with was an update that we received today from the Ohio Department of Development about the existing Brownfields program. They had a webinar this morning. If you were unable to attend, I want to provide you a few of the highlights from that webinar today. They announced that they will be opening the 2025 application window on February 19th at 10 a.m. That is a week and a day from today, next Thursday. Grants this cycle are going to be limited to $2.5 million per project. That is down from what has previously been a $10 million max award that projects could receive. They're also limiting grants to projects that have not already received funds. The exception to that being if you have received a grant for a project in order to conduct an assessment, you can now go back and receive a cleanup grant. However, if a project is being done in phases, or if you have discovered a need for additional grant funds on a project that you are already working on for a cleanup, they are not going to accept applications for those projects, which leaves, ongoing need then for additional grant funds down the road. They're going to be looking to conduct a 10-day cure period for all applications. Applications will be accepted until March 21st of this year, or until they receive $125 million in requests for the program. However, it is worth noting that there is only $50 million available for grants in fiscal year 2025. So if you are going to be looking to receive grant funds in this current cycle, would strongly suggest you have your applications ready to go and submitted when they begin accepting those applications on February 19th at 10 o'clock a.m. If you do have any questions about that, I would encourage you to reach out directly to the Department of Development. We'll try to answer some questions. I think Aaron and I were both participating in the webinar today. We had a few questions. I'm sure you may have some others. We'll do the best that we can to answer those. Please save all of your questions until the end, and we would ask that you submit those in the chat since this webinar is being recorded today. One other thing I will also note that is not up here on the screen, because this application cycle does not include any county set-aside funds, all grant applications that are being submitted will require a 25% local match. So if you're going to be looking for the $2.5 million, you're going to want to make sure you have a 25% match for that in what you're going to be requesting from the Department of Development. So the main thing that we wanted to discuss today is the Brownfield remediation program and sort of where that program is going to be going over the next several months and next several years. Greater Ohio Policy Center's 2025-2026 public policy agenda continues to prioritize funding for Brownfield remediation program. This is the #1 policy priority that we are bringing to the legislature this year. And we are continuing to ask them for additional funding for the program. We are also seeking, along with that, important changes to the current program that we see as imperative for the program to achieve long-term success for the Brownfield remediation efforts statewide. Now, Governor DeWine introduced his budget proposal to the General Assembly last Monday on February 3rd. The as-introduced budget does not include any additional funding for operations for the Brownfield remediation program beyond this year. The as introduced budget did include an ask of $2.5 million per year for the program. However, these funds will allow for the administration of the Department of Development to oversee fulfillment of outstanding grants over the next 2 years. These will not be made available for funding, for assessments, or remediation projects. This is only on the administrative side of that program. When asked last week at a hearing unrelated to the main operating budget, Department of Development Director Lydia Mihalik indicated to members of the State Transportation Committee that was reviewing the transportation budget that they were viewing this budget as sort of a return to normal. And so they were not asking for any additional funds for that program. If you've been following this program for the last several years, you will know that this is not unfamiliar territory to us. The original Brownfield program that was created in 2022 did not come at the request of the governor's office. And the new funding that was made available in the last budget also did not come at the request of the governor's office. This has been a legislative initiative from the beginning. So once again, we are going to be looking to the legislature to lead on this issue and provide funding for the Brownfield program for at least 2 more years. So that brings me to yesterday's news. Lawmakers have introduced standalone legislation in the Ohio House of Representatives. Yesterday, House Bill 93, sponsored by Representatives Thomas Hall and Bright Sweeney, was introduced in the Ohio House of Representatives. House Bill 93 would restore the Clean Ohio Council, place the Ohio EPA as a key partner with the Department of Development in reviewing and hearing applications. Applications would be scored and grants would be awarded based on merit, not the current first come, first served model. County set-asides would be maintained. However, under this proposal, they would be limited to assessment grants only and not awarded in a competitive process. The funding method for this program is to utilize the excess liquor profits that the state receives from Jobs Ohio. It's also worth noting that today the State Controlling Board is going to be taking up a measure to extend the contract the state has with Jobs Ohio for the administration of the state liquor agency. Our understanding is that part of that agreement does not include Jobs Ohio retaining any additional funds, as had been discussed at one point during the process of negotiating the contract extension. So we will continue to see money coming in from Jobs Ohio to the General Revenue Fund, which we're targeting for the Brownfield remediation program as part of this proposal. Now, GOPC's legislative strategy is not entirely tied to this standalone legislation. The standalone bill is intended to serve as a discussion point. The ultimate goal is to enact the provisions of House Bill 93 as an amendment to the state budget, which was also introduced yesterday as House Bill 96. So the budget process that's currently underway in the state of Ohio sees the House Finance Committee already at work on the state budget. They're having hearings and receiving testimony from multiple state agencies, boards and commissions, and eventually the general public. In addition to the Finance Committee, a number of standing committees in the House is also receiving testimony from specific state agencies. We expect that at a certain point, there will be hearings in which the Department of Development, the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, and others will be testifying about their budget requests. These committees are going to afford us an opportunity to testify as members of the public and speak about the need for the state to continue funding for the Brownfield remediation program for at least the next 2 years. The more committees hear this testimony, the more members will hear this testimony, and this will provide us with a greater opportunity to introduce the concept of continued funding and programmatic changes to the Brownfield remediation program to as many members of the General Assembly as we can touch. So this is where the process will go beyond the committee process. The House is expected to pass the budget by the end of April. The Senate will start working on the budget prior to the House passing the budget, but they will pass their version of the budget by sometime in mid-June. The conference committee will, to negotiate differences between the House and Senate versions of the budget, will begin sometime in mid to late June, with final passage expected by June 30th, 2025. These are the three deadlines that we will need to keep in mind as we are seeking to make these changes and including funding for the Brownfield remediation program. These are the three deadlines that we have to meet in order for this to be able to continue beyond June 30th, 2025. Now, House Bill 93 will ensure that debate on continued Brownfield funding will continue beyond the budget. However, failure to pass this language and funding in the state budget will ensure that there is a gap in funding and a delay in project completion. This will most directly impact projects that have received assessment grants in the past, or potentially in this current round of funding that will be opening up on February 19th. But it will leave open the question of whether or not there will be future cleanup funds available for those brownfield sites where work may already be underway. Now, Aaron and I have already been meeting with members of the General Assembly. We have met with many members of the Finance Committee, as well as freshman lawmakers whom we have been introducing to Greater Ohio and the work that we're doing, including the Brownfield remediation program. We've undertaken a lot of these meetings, and we are planning on testifying at the committee hearings when those opportunities become available, but we cannot do it alone. And this is what we want our ask of you all that are joining us on the webinar today. While we are going to continue to prioritize this funding ask as it relates to the Brownfield remediation program, Aaron and I can only be in so many places at so many times. And so we're going to be looking to you who utilize this program on a daily basis to give us as much assistance as you possibly can to support continuation of funding for the Brownfield remediation program for at least the next 2 years. So what our ask of you today is that you contact your state representatives and state senators and urge them to continue to support the program. We're also encouraging you to contact the governor's office and the Ohio Department of Development. They have clearly passed the responsibility of moving on this program to the state legislature. However, the governor does have a say in this, in that he gets to sign the budget when the legislature passes it. And ODOD will, of course, be responsible for administering the program going forward. So they also need to be hearing from you and making it known that this is something that's important to you, important to your communities, important to your work, and you want to see this funding continue beyond the end of this current fiscal year on June 30th. We're also looking to you to submit testimony to the House and Senate committees as those hearings get underway. If you're able to come to Columbus and provide testimony in person, we would encourage you to do that. However, we also know that you're very busy and you may not have the time to be able to take out of your day to travel from all corners of the state to converge down here in Columbus. You can submit testimony in writing that will become a part of the committee record. We want to have as many groups as we possibly can submitting testimony to the legislature so they know and understand how important this is to your communities, to your business, and to the projects that you're involved in. We would also encourage you to undertake a campaign with local media, write letters to the editor, expressing the importance of this program and why these investments are important to your community and the impact that previous projects are already having on communities that may have been completed or have completed the brownfield process but may be getting underway for additional construction projects. We would really appreciate any support that you can give us on this. You can feel free to reach out to Aaron and I if you have questions about process, things that you want to say. We'll be even happy to provide you with talking points that you can incorporate into your communications to legislators. But we do also want to emphasize the importance of making sure that you're lending your own voice to this. You can speak authoritatively about the projects that you're involved in, the impact that this is having on your community. We don't want you to just rely on our talking points, we want you to be able to speak authentically about why this program is important to you, important to your communities. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop with our formal presentation this afternoon rather. We want to go ahead and open up the floor to any questions that you may have about where we are presently with the Brownfield remediation program. And I'll go ahead and ask Aaron if he wants to jump in here as well to help me answer any questions. I do see that Aaron has included a link to House Bill 93 in the chat, so you all can see that. Yeah, at this point, we welcome any questions that you may have about House Bill 93, about the budget process, or kind of where things stand with the budget program at this time. Well, we don't have a lot of questions. Aaron, you're on with us. Do you have anything that you want to add that I've touched on this afternoon?
No, thanks, Jason. I appreciate the presentation. Thanks everyone for being here and hearing an update and seeing how you can tap in and help out with this. I will say too, with sitting in with Jason, having these meetings at the legislator with legislators is uh, we're heading into what they keep referencing as a tighter budget. Of course, the funding ask that we're asking for is less than previous years, but still a significant amount, about $100 million or so that we're looking for. But also, I think when Jason, with the reference of reaching out and sharing how the program's important for you, your communities, your work, economic community development that you're doing in the state, I think is really impactful. I think this budget's going to be a little tighter. And I think having the ability to kind of share why this program is so important, I think the members of the legislature realize that, but it's just the importance of hearing it again and again and again. That they have a lot of different things that come through and in front of them. So we want to just make sure we keep this present throughout all processes of the budget. So I think that's the biggest thing here. And now my talking has spurred questions.
Yes, wonderful. So thank you. Yeah, we do have a few questions that have come in. So the first question that we had is there a letter with top points to hit that we could use as a base to send? We do have some talking points that are available. Actually, you can go right now to the ohiobrownfields.com website. There's some information on there that we generated actually last session that was about the previous Brownfield legislation, House Bill 519. Those talking points you can utilize in reference to House Bill 93. And we can also send out some additional messages that you can utilize as part of your ask after this webinar that we will be more than happy to share with you, that you'd be able to incorporate into any messaging, any communications that you're sharing with legislators. The next question was, can we expect any funding in 26-27 moved to Brownfield similar to what we're able to accomplish in 24-25 if we advocate? So that's a very good question, Matthew. And as Aaron was just indicating, we are anticipating in many regards that this is going to be something of an austerity budget. While the administration has put forward a budget proposal that actually does include increased spending, a lot of that is reliant on some increases in taxes that don't affect all taxpayers, but it is still looking to grow the base of funds. Based on what we've heard from the legislature so far, some of those proposals are not exceptionally popular and may not be included. So it will still be likely that programs will have to be cut going forward. Recognizing this, Greater Ohio has been tailoring our ask to lawmakers as we've been meeting with them. The funding that is tied up in House Bill 93, the excess liquor profits that come back from Jobs Ohio, our proposal on that would see somewhere between $75 and $100 million in available funding that would be made available for that program. Should the legislature decide not to act on that, but to continue to put general revenue funds towards the program as they have for the last 2 years, we've been asking the legislature to consider somewhere between $100 to $150 million per year. So that would be a slight reduction of what we have seen currently available for the Brownfield program, but it would still be a not insignificant amount of money that we'd be able to put to use to fund remediation projects and assessments statewide. And that, again, is why we're asking all of you to help us to get this message across, because right now we're not looking at any money being available beyond the end of June. And so we are going to be asking for all of your support to help us encourage the legislature to keep that funding going. The next question, I know we were talking about brownfield projects, but have there been discussion about reviving the gas station cleanup program? Aaron, you may want to help me join in here. As far as I know, they are not proposing any additional funding for the gas station cleanup program. They do still have some funds, I believe, that are left over in that program that is being administered. I've not heard of any discussions about putting additional funding towards that program. And it's possible that going forward, it could be something that ends up getting swept into the brownfield remediation program, so that there's just one brownfield program. You have anything you want to add to that, Aaron? No? Okay.
No, I think that covers it. I haven't, there hasn't been any over talk about putting more money in. I know that it was running low. It had almost spent all that is available. And I know there have been some gas stations that have gone through the Brownfield program as well. But yeah, I would agree with what you said there.
So the next question that we have is, will you be sharing the presentation slides, and also will be multiple hearings on the operation budget? Are certain hearings more important for brownfield funding? And can you give us a heads up, since the committee requires a testimony to be submitted 24 hours in advance? All very good questions. So first and foremost, yes, this presentation is being recorded today. We will maybe not be posting this on our website per se, but we will certainly make the recording available to everyone who is registered to be here. We know not everyone can get here after they register, but we will be making that presentation available, and we'll be happy to share the slide deck that we put together, and I encourage you to share that with other folks who are within your networks who might be interested in the Brownfield program. As far as the hearings go, we'll get a better sense here in the next coming weeks once we see where some of these state agencies are testifying. The Finance Committee obviously is the most important. The Finance Committee is the largest committee in the legislature. Of 99 members in the House, 31 of them serve on the Finance Committee, so it's a pretty good size of the House that is represented on that committee. But those smaller standing committees that are also hearing the legislation are going to be important, because not all of the members of that committee are on the Finance Committee. Key members of those committees are, for instance, the Development Committee that I mentioned, which I assume is going to be hearing testimony from the Ohio Department of Development. The chairman of that committee sits on the Finance Committee. So he will have a role in helping to craft the budget proposal that comes out of the House. And so that committee being able to hear testimony about the importance of the Brownfield program is going to be critical. Because we're going to be including the Ohio EPA as part of this new proposal, whatever committee hears testimony from the Ohio EPA, it's also going to be important that they hear testimony, because that is a new wrinkle that we're looking to, because we want to bring the Ohio EPA back into the fold. They've been out of it for the last 4 years, but we know that they have the institutional knowledge and expertise about brownfield projects, which we think would be critical to helping the Department of Development in this new phase that we're proposing for the brownfield remediation program. We will do our best to give you as much of a heads up as to when those hearings are going to be taking place. Announcements typically are made late in the week for the following week. So we'll be looking tomorrow and Friday for announcements of committee meetings for next week. Once we receive that word, we will get as much notification out to you as we can, because yes, you are correct. They do require 24 hours to submit that testimony. And we'll do our best to make sure that you get that. And that also will include getting those talking points out to you. We will share the testimony that we are writing ahead of time so you can see what Greater Ohio is going to be saying. And perhaps that will assist you in developing testimony on your own. The next question we have, in smaller counties, the demo grant made huge impact, and we have much more that we can do. Do you know if this will ever be revived? It's a very good question. The demolition program finds itself in the same situation right now as the Brownfield remediation program. The administration has not proposed any additional funding for that program, apart from, I believe it's $1.25 million per year for programmatic operations, so they can continue to fulfill the grants that have already been awarded from that program. Aaron and I talk on a regular basis with our friends at the Ohio Land Bank Association, who have been the primary recipients of that demolition funding since it was created back in 2021 at the same time as the Brownfield program. And we know that they too are looking for additional funding for 2 more years for that program. I believe they're looking for about the same amount of money that they've received the last 2 years, which is $150 million for 2 years. And so we're supportive of their efforts to try to get that as well. They are not looking for the substantial program changes that we are for the Brownfield program, but they are going to be looking for additional operation funds for that program for at least 2 more years. Did you mention on the development webinar on the existing Brownfield program earlier today, did you know if they will be posting the webinar on their website? They did commit that they were going to be posting that webinar. I'm not sure when. We did mention at the beginning that they are going to be opening up the applications for 2025 next Thursday, February the 19th at 10 a.m. There's only $50 million that is available. They're reducing the max awards that you can receive for that program at $2.5 million. They are still going to be requiring a 25% match for those funds. And they are not going to be rewarding projects that are being done in phases. So if they have previously received a cleanup grant for one phase, you are not going to be able to request funding for a second phase of that same project. If, however, you received an assessment grant for a project and are now looking for cleanup funds, those will be awarded, and they will be awarding assessment grants. My only word of caution on applying for an assessment grant in this round, however, is that since it is up in the air about whether or not additional funding is going to be available beyond June 30th, it would probably not be a wise idea to be applying for assessment grants at this time. If you have projects that you're working on that are looking for cleanup funds, I would apply for those. But because we still have this uncertainty about the availability of funding beyond June 30th, I would not look for an assessment grant right now on the assumption that there will be cleanup funding available in the future. Next, any discussions about money saved, money that may not have been spent on previous grant rounds as projects get closed? That's a good question. Not sure what is going to be happening there. I think probably what your question is, if you have money left over from a project that you received funding for, that you want to possibly be looking to use towards another project that you may have in the pipeline. That's a question that it would be best addressed by the Department of Development. I don't have any information about that. Aaron, I'm not sure if you've had any discussions with development, if you have any insight that you might be able to provide for us.
Oh, I would agree with that. And I don't know, Matthew, if this question's also getting to like if there will be additional dollars for any projects that didn't move through or how to pull back or whatnot. I know when we were talking to the Department of Development, they are able to have it at about $50 million, which is a little more than they were anticipating just because the money has been earning some interest in some investment that they've had, which is allowing for, I think, a little more dollar amount to be granted out. We have not heard anything explicitly on, if there will be any additional dollars for what has not been spent or whatnot, or if the program will continue. Should money come out after the fiscal year, anything of that sort. So it's not, the intention is that that is not the case.
It's also possible, I would add to that, because they are, have said with the application window that's opening next week that while $50 million is available, they're going to take applications up to a max of $125 million. It's possible that they may be anticipating that some of those projects that maybe have come in under budget, that they might not be releasing as many funds as they assumed. They would be able to use some of those funds to, maybe make awards beyond the $50 million that is assumed it's going to be there. But again, we don't have any good information from the development about how any of that will work. So I guess we're just going to have to stay in touch and stay tuned as to what happens with the current program. We do have a couple of minutes. I'll see if there are any other questions that may be coming through in the chat. While we might be looking for those, I do also, I guess, want to take advantage of the audience that we have here and do a shameful plug, which I'm sure Aaron will appreciate. So the 2025 Ohio Brownfield Conference is coming up on Thursday, May the 8th, here in Columbus. We're going to be at the Quest Conference Center, which is just off of I-70 in the Polaris area of Columbus, if you've never been. Early bird registration for the Brownfield Conference ends on February 28th, so a couple of weeks from now. So be sure to register today for the conference so you can save $20 per registration on that by taking advantage of the early bird registration. And also, the deadline for panel proposals for the conference are due this Friday, February the 14th. So we would encourage you, if you do have ideas for panels for the committee to review as they are assisting in the planning of the conference, you get that information in to them, into Aaron by this Friday. So we hope to see all of you at the Brownfield Conference. I know that the last two have been very exciting, very educational, and we look forward to seeing you all once again here at the 2025 Conference. So since we've got no other questions in the chat, I guess we will go ahead and end today. We want to thank all of you once again for joining us this afternoon to get this update about where things stand with the Brownfield program. We feel very good going forward that the conversations that we've had with legislators have been nothing but positive. We feel like we're in a good position, that we're definitely going to need all of your help to get us over the finish line and make sure that this program can continue for the next 2 years. We'll be sure to follow up with you with a recording of this presentation, as well as the slide deck that you saw today, as well as the talking points and messaging that you can use when contacting your legislators about the Brownfield program. Any additional questions, feel free to contact Aaron or I. Our emails are there on the screen. The websites for both Greater Ohio and the Ohio Brownfield project that we have are on the screen. And we would also encourage you for regular updates about how things are progressing at the State House with the budget, as well as House Bill 93. Give us a follow. We are now on Blue Sky. You can see our handle there. And also, we provide regular updates through our LinkedIn channel as well. So if we're not connected on there, go ahead and get connected with Greater Ohio. You can get all the updates in real time as they become available. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. We greatly appreciate it. And we look forward to continuing to work with you over the next couple of minutes.